to the first episode of the Anime Dungeon podcast. In this podcast, me, John Smith, is joined by his co-host and friend, NP4AG, No Pussy for Asian Guy.
Hey guys, what's up? NP4AG over here, and as my associate has mentioned, it's No Pussy for Asian Guy.
Yes, that's correct. And today's episode, we are going to be discussing, we sort of decided on trying to understand why...
what makes a good shonen?
Exactly. Yes.
You know, considering all of the shows that have come out, from Japan, what exactly makes them so great? By extension, what makes them so nostalgic? Because a lot of the shows that we have all seen, right? Dragonball Z, Yu Yu Hakusho, they were all from the 90s when Toonami came around. And, I think a lot of us would still hold these shows to very high regard simply because they were, some of our first exposures to the shonen genre in anime. So that's why we wanted to talk about it today as our first topic.
Yeah, and I guess, look, to be quite honest with you, my co-host is a lot more knowledgeable about this stuff than I am. I guess it'll be very interesting trying to bounce these ideas back and forth. But this new show, My Hero Academia, right? I haven't seen any of it, but it does seem like it borrows a lot of elements from shows like Yu Yu Hakusho and Dragon Ball Z. And I guess I'm interested in why people would want to watch the same thing over and over and over again. It just seems very counterintuitive to me.
Right, so with My Hero Academia, it is the kind of the new hot shonen show out right now. And, a lot of people certainly like it because it has that kind of superhero flair to it, right? It's a bunch of young students in Japan who have these abilities called quirks, right? A certain number of the population are born with these special abilities, these quirks. And you could think of this as kind of like the X-Men, almost, right? You have these...
Yeah, I was thinking about, like, Marvel superhero movies, and, they release all these movies, and they all seem to have the same ending, except for Infinity War, which is an entirely different monster unto itself. But a lot of these tend to have the same ending. There's a protagonist, and he comes up with some superpower, and he's expected to save humanity somehow in some way or another.
Yeah, all of these kids in My Hero Academia, they are you could think of them as like the mutants from X-Men, right? They're born with special abilities, and they want to use it for the greater good, or at least a certain population of them want to use it for the greater good. There are, of course, the other this other group who want to use their powers for nefarious purposes. But the show itself, focuses on our main protagonist, right? His name is Deku.
Little Deku Tree.
Yeah, Deku Scrub, as it were. But he, wants to grow up being a hero. There's this main hero figure in the show called All Might. Really big, muscular guy. Wears red. And
he kind of looks like that guy from Full Metal Alchemist.
Alex Louise Armstrong.
Yes, Armstrong.
Right? He certainly has Armstrong's build, but he has that. This whole character of All Might looks very American. Right? He just screams like all-American hero. And I think that I guess that was the intention. Heck, all of his attacks are named after like cities and states from America, right? There's Detroit Smash, there's Delaware Smash, there's United States of Smash, right? This guy is a full-on like American file, if that's even a word. But yeah, this is the kind of like the hero figure in the show, and our main protagonist Deku wants greatly idolizes All Might, and he wants to be the greatest hero of all time. And it seems to be a very Japanese kind of mentality, right? You know, the fact that, you know, every young, you know, young kid in growing up wants to, you know, be that heroic figure, right? Saving everybody and, you know, saving the world. But
when, ironically, in Japanese society, you could interpret it as a society of slaves, because they're all trying to get up to the point of salaryman.
Right. I mean, like, that's where they all inevitably end up in, you know, the a very monotonous position as a salaryman in, you know, in the
Well, you want to
Japanese
make the
workforce.
kids happy, so you kind of
Right. You don't want to kill kids' dreams, right? And same here with America too, and probably for a lot of the world. You know, you want the kids to, you know, have you know, you don't want to shatter their imaginations, right? You want them to think that they can do whatever they want, but you know, reality hits in, and you know, you can't actually do what you want.
For sure.
But you know, I think the adults of the world, whether in fiction or in reality, want their kids to, you know, still feel like they can do, you know, they can become whatever they want to.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of like the story of all of My Hero Academia, right?
I guess I suppose I mean, because in Yu Yu Hakusho, right, Yusuke gets this when he dies, he meets God, I'm forgetting all these.
Botan.
Yeah, he meets Botan, and he basically is given this quest of, oh, well, a lot of people on Earth actually need your help, and hey, you know, can you help us basically kill these demons with this newfound power? And but like, I don't really understand though, like, why My Hero Academia, like why people would consider that good. And but really, if you boil it down to its like most rudimentary structure, it's very much very similar to Yu Yu Hakusho, right? Because Yu Yu Hakusho, you know, a middle school age boy gets some superpowers, and of course Yusuke's a different character. Like, Yusuke's kind of an asshole, and like Deku Scrub Boy, from what I've heard, is sort of like a very precocious and very excited, and has a lot of energy, like a lot of positive energy.
Yeah.
So like, why would people like watching that, like watching the same show again though? Like,
honestly, I don't know. It's a tough question to answer. I think it's because it's a formula that people enjoy seeing repeatedly. I mean, if you strip it down to its bare bones, right? You know, what is a shonen genre, right? It's always, you know, you follow a main protagonist. He or she gets some superpower. They fight off the bad guys, you know, and along the way they make a lot of friends, and you know, power of friendship, right? Trumps all. You know, it's a
friendship circle.
It's a trope that's, you know, beaten to death, but people still come back to it, right? It's like junk food that you know it's probably not good for you, and it's, you know, it's like the same thing over and over again, but you still consume it anyway.
Well, I suppose it's the same It's the same reason why people listen to pop music, right? People listen to pop music because it has, you know, the same 4 cadences, like 4, 3, 5, 4, 1, right? It's just over and over again. Dun 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 dun. Kind of like Pachelbel Canon, like, you know, it's like pretty much one of the most famous classical pieces to ever exist, and people still play that fucking song because it's like, oh, right. You know, like. It's just it's pretty much just like conditioned into us, and like people are too afraid to look into other things that just may seem uncomfortable.
Right, and you know, I can't really blame people for liking you know, these kinds of shonen shows, right?
Yeah,
I think, you know, well, one aspect of it is, you know, you're going against the odds sometimes, right? You want to defeat like a greater evil. I mean, you know, who doesn't want that, right? You know, everyone would want to, you know. Everyone would wish that they could be in the protagonist's shoes, right?
Well,
I mean, some people, you know, but again, you know, I personally don't hold My Hero Academia to the same regard as others might, because I do have some problems with the character, the main character Deku. He's too. I don't know what the best way to put it is. He's too like obsessed with this idea of being a hero, right? Like he wants to save everybody.
It's more of like his character doesn't really change, I guess.
Yeah, right. He remains steadfast, like heroic, and he wants to save, like everybody, and he beats himself up if he can't.
Right.
Which is, I don't like that because it's not realistic. You can't save everybody. And in fact, there's this one character that I despise to all hell in My Hero Academia. His name is Bakugo. Katsuki Bakugo. This fucking piece of shit is like the textbook bully character, right? He treats, our main character like garbage, right? And, he's even gone out of his way to, on borderline almost kill our main character. And yet our main character, Deku, still treats Bakugo as a friend. I never could understand that, right?
Let me guess, this relationship never develops throughout,
I mean,
however many tens or hundreds of episodes that it
right,
has.
So, according to the manga, apparently Bakugo gets better. He starts to begrudgingly accept Deku, our main character. But again, this is very akin to the whole Goku and Vegeta relationship, right? The Vegeta's always like that hot-headed rival who always hates Goku, right, because of how superior Goku always is, and Vegeta has indicated in several times that he wants to beat Goku, and and he doesn't care about whether it's like to the death. He just wants to prove his superiority. But then over time, Vegeta mellows out, becomes one of the good guys.
But that takes like 100 episodes.
Yeah,
so.
and the other thing that really annoys me is that when you're writing characters like these, you want them to have at least some redeeming qualities. Like you can't just have them be perpetually an asshole. And then expect us to like this person when they eventually become one of our main characters, friends, right? I really don't like it when that happens. And currently, Bakugo has not really, in my opinion, he has not really shown any redeeming qualities. He's always hot-headed, he's always quarrelsome, and he's always too prideful to admit his own flaws, and he's just a very abrasive character, and I don't like seeing that.
But I think that you could actually make an argument that that character could be entertaining and comic relief. And,
no, it's not even that.
Because Kuwabara in Yu Yu Hakusho was basically a comic relief, right? Oh. He was a bully, he was an asshole, he punched Yusuke and stole his lunch money or whatever.
Yeah, but Kuwabara was kind of a how should I put this? He was kind of like a jerk ass, but with a heart of gold, right? Like he had that tough guy act, but he was never, I didn't really find his personality to be that caustic, I didn't hate him for his his quote unquote bully personality. I hated him because of how fucking useless he was for most of the time, right?
He was pretty useless.
I really
he never won any battles. Maybe one or two in the Dark Tournament.
As far as I remember, he won his battle against Elder Toguro. but even that I think was kind of a fluke.
Right.
I never liked those comic relief characters that really serve no purpose. So if you want to write a really good comic relief character, I would say that your gold standard would be someone like I don't know, Joseph Joestar from JoJo's Bizarre Adventures.
Yes.
Well, the Joseph Joestar from Battle Tendency. He was like a prankster, right? He was a troll. He's a comic relief, but he also was very smart. He knew how to handle his opponents. He was basically the most powerful fighter in Part 2 JoJo.
Right.
We're not going to talk about the other parts of JoJo because they're complete trash in my humble opinion.
I actually agree with you, and I started watching after I started watching Stardust Crusaders, I think, and I just couldn't get around the fact that it kind of turned into something out of like Digimon or Pokemon, where like it wasn't really about the characters and them playing off of one another and like them saying like these silly little quirks and being pranksters and having these smart little quips and doing like totally crazy things. It was more of like, oh, like this stand has this power and like, oh, he has this attack and
that's one of my major issues with Stardust Crusaders and beyond, right? Ever since Araki, the manga creator, introduced this whole concept of stands, right? I mean, the way I see it, stands are essentially Pokemon, right?
Yes.
They're basically there to just do all the fighting for you.
Absolutely.
And I never found that to be, that like enthralling, especially when, with things like Stardust Crusaders and Diamond is Unbreakable, all the episodes are like kind of a villain of the week format, right? There is no there is I guess an
overarching story,
right? But
that pops in and out. But really, it's sort of like it's like equivalent to if you've ever seen like Pokemon or anything like that. I'm sure you have, but it's equivalent to something like CSI has like a case of the week, and they're doing the fake coding using Visual Basic or whatever they claim that they're using, and they do the tests, and the next episode you never hear about it again. And
and I really don't like that kind of format. Again, it's not very interesting, and I just got kind of bored with Jojo in Stardust Crusaders. I wish that they would go back to the hormone, right? The ripple from parts 1 and 2.
Right.
That was some of the best stuff out there.
Well, I think also what interested me personally about, because I saw parts 1 and 2 and I tried to watch Stardust Crusaders and I couldn't get into it, but because of reasons explained before. But Stardust Crusaders, so the first 2 series of JoJo, what I found really interesting is that, Jonathan Joestar is who they start on. And he basically emigrates from England to the U.S., right?
Actually, that would be, he was in the middle of doing that, but most of the story takes place in England.
That's right.
But they struggle against Dio.
Right. So what I really liked about it was I really liked the family lineage and how much emphasis they put on that with Jonathan Joestar basically has to he loves this girl, but like all these other people are in his way, and he has to basically like you really want him to win because you see like so much is on the line, and it seems like in many of these other shonen animes that I see, you don't really have that same there's not that same urgency. Like when you watch an episode of Dragonball Z, it's very passive. It's a lot of standing around. It's a lot of saying, "Oh, what does this guy think? Oh, what does Master Roshi think?" Even though he's like 300 miles away. Like,
I mean, JoJo was definitely an interesting addition to like the shonen genre,
and it's an old manga, right?
It is an old manga. They only started they made anime episodes but back in like the
90s,
but they weren't I mean, people saw them, I suppose, but they didn't. The official reboot by David Productions animation studio started in 2012 with they started all the way back to Phantom Blood with Jonathan Joestar. But yeah, JoJo is definitely a lot different than the traditional like shonens that we've seen in the past. Well, specifically parts 1 and 2. I mean, parts 3 and beyond is... let's not discuss those because I don't really acknowledge their existence.
Yes. I think we've acknowledged that neither of us is not a big fan of anything after season 2.
Right.
So,
and of course, we could be very well persecuted for stating this, since I know that...
I'm pretty sure people would have her heads on.
Yeah, exactly
on
right. But you know, I don't really give a shit about people's opinions. You know, you know, sometimes people's opinions are shit, and I'm not afraid to point that out.
People think our opinions are shit. So like,
yeah,
hey,
well,
it's a two-way street.
It is a two-way street, right? But I mean, overall, back to you know, like My Hero Academia. That show is, I guess I'm enjoying it, but you know, I'm not like gonna praise it to you know to all hell, right? Like everyone else is saying, at least to my knowledge, you know. This show is great, you know, like one of the best shonens out there. It's kind of like, you know, ever since Naruto and Bleach ended, it's kind of like filling that void of like the next big shonen. I guess it is to some degree, but it's kind of taking inspiration from a tried and true formula, right? You know, it's more or less kind of like you know, X-Men, but in anime form. You know, with you know, everyone having you know, really different superpowers, right? Some very standard, like you know, fire and ice powers, right, or invisibility. But then some others have a you know, very I guess unique ones that you may not see in say in the X-Men. Like I don't know. Let's see. I guess I can't really. Oh yeah, there's a guy who like shoots tape from his elbows. Like I don't know what that's about. There's also a little kid. This little.
Okay,
pervert.
I guess I gotta see My Hero Academia now because the guy shooting tape. From his elbows,
I mean, this guy is not even like considered one of the important characters. He's just like one of the side characters. But you know, again, I'm just pointing out like you know that the superpowers are a little different, right? You know, you got this tape guy and this little kid who grows like sticky balls out of his head and he uses them as like weapons, I guess. But no one really.
They had that sort of thing in One Piece actually with like the first couple of like within the first like 40 or 50 episodes when Luffy and the gang fight. Oh man. It was like the Buggy like
Buggy the Clown.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, and I guess yeah. I mean, so a lot of these superpowers are like the creators certainly put some thought into making them as unique as possible. But you know, One Piece. Man, One Piece. What can I say about that? I do not like One Piece. Is I guess my my overall like opinion of that series.
But what made it not good in your eyes?
I think it's because the character, the Luffy as a main character is just not. I don't find him to be very appealing. He's kind of like he has that idiot syndrome going on, right? Like he acts like a fucking moron, like 90% of the time. It's only when you know he's in a serious fight where he starts acting serious. And I know that some people can, you know, brush it off as just him being like, you know, like comical, right? This is the main purpose is to serve as comic relief, but I don't know. It just never. That was.
I think they do a really good job of the voice actress who voices Luffy, the main character, in the English dub, does a really good job in encapsulating you know Luffy having a lot of energy and like just doing dumb shit all the time. And I think the dub is actually it's really worth seeing over the Japanese dub because I've seen the Japanese bits and parts here and there, and I could not. I mean, me as someone who is American and has watched this show in the past. I don't watch it anymore. I probably watched it in like 2008, 2009. I've watched the first 200 episodes, which is actually a lot of time spent.
Yeah, I know, right? I watched more episodes than I would care to admit myself. But yeah, you know, the English dub was fantastic.
It's done really well because it actually it actually puts a lot of personality into the pirates that the Japanese that the Japanese dub does not, in my opinion. And that could just be a bias on my part because I don't know Japanese.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I feel like this is this is like a landmine topic that we'll probably save for another podcast, right? This whole dub versus sub war that goes on.
Oh, jeez.
And my goodness, is it a toxic environment to be in. Especially when there are so many I don't know what you can call them, like anime elitists out there.
We can't watch anything in another language except for Japanese.
Right. These weeaboos, that they always have a preference for the Japanese because apparently in their eyes, Japanese is the language.
Is the superior language to the people, and
exactly right. And,
even though the entire world speaks English, but whatever. And
right, like even though they probably couldn't speak a lick of Japanese themselves, they still idolize it like it's the language of God, But again, topic for another day.
But I guess I sort of mentioned that because I definitely would. I definitely would not have liked. I out of the three main big shonen shows, Naruto, One Piece, and Bleach, I probably like One Piece the most because the English dub was done really well, and there's a lot of personality to go. Like the team members play off of each other really well, especially in the English dub. But that could also contribute, be a pretty large factor in contributing to why a shonen anime could be considered. Someone gets considered a shonen anime to be really good based on just a dub of a show.
I would agree. I certainly watched probably 200, 300 episodes of One Piece, and I watched it all in English too. And the English voice acting was really top notch. You got a lot of the a lot of the voice actors from Dragon Ball Z, working on it, right? Like Chris Sabat was Zoro,
right?
Eric Vale, who voiced Trunks, he voiced Sanji. Usopp was voiced by Krillin.
Yeah. Yep.
So it's really fantastic to see all these old familiar voices being casted for these characters. But after a point, now don't get me wrong, I really liked One Piece when I started watching it at the time.
Right.
And it was kind of like that sense of adventure, right? Despite my disdain for Luffy's personality, I still liked that sense of adventure, right, that they were going on. But I think it came to a point where I started to realize that the formula that One Piece was using was, it started kind of...
It gets drains on you a little bit. Because
right.
the problem is that Ichiro Oda, right, the writer of One Piece, he doesn't know when he actually wants to end it. I'm pretty sure he just wants to prolong it for 20 more years.
Right.
And it's like, are they ever going to find the One Piece? And I just feel that he's gonna turn it around and say, they had the One Piece all along, and they were the One Piece.
Right. Like the One Piece was the friends we made along the way, right? Like it's probably gonna end up with being super
fucking cheesy.
And I kind of don't even understand what the point of One Piece is right now, right? Like the whole point was to find the One Piece, and that was like the ultimate goal. But then Luffy and his Straw Hat Pirates are just kind of globe trotting, right? They're just kind of jumping from island to island, going into from one conflict into the next one, and they're constantly being derailed in a sense. Like what happened to finding the goddamn One Piece?
Well,
Jesus.
I feel like the story went downhill after they crossed the Grand Line, because the Grand Line was it was like a checkpoint in the series of I guess people would consider all the episodes before the Grand Line as an intro to the series, but the intro to the series is probably one of the best parts of the series, because you get introduced to the world seems so big, and you see all these different characters, and you have all these contrasting personalities. In the first 5 episodes, you meet Luffy, Zoro, Nami, you meet Buggy the pirate and his clan, and you meet the people in the town where they're fighting Buggy, and it just seems so diverse, and it's ooh, this seems so new, because
I think creativity is always at its freshest in the beginning of a series, but then it starts to undergo a lot of fatigue afterwards.
I
right?
think
I mean, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I guess what I wanted to say is that the formula becomes a lot more noticeable after the Grand Line, because what my co-host was saying before was, these pirates are just globetrotting around the world, and they just fight. They fight one group of people, and then they go to another island, and they fight another group of people, and the formula starts to wane, and they don't really do much of anything new.
No, and it's always like they go to a new island, right? They meet the inhabitants of the island. They get pulled into this conflict. There's a new bad guy who is like, ultra powerful. Luffy battles this bad guy. He loses, and then next time he gets stronger somehow through bullshit ass pulls, and then defeats the bad guy, and then hey, rinse and repeat, moves on to the next island. I feel like that's been going on
for 15 years.
More than that. I mean, the One Piece manga started as far as I think 1997.
Yeah, so I think it was a one shot manga, and then Ichiro Oda said, "Oh, let's make this into a series." So
yeah, right. So it's been going on for almost 20 or so years, and I just stopped caring about One Piece. It just got too repetitive, and I didn't not to mention that the character designs also I think got worse. When Oda first released One Piece, I'd say his designs were really although they were simplistic, they were fairly good looking.
Yeah.
And then if you take a look at all the designs now, they look very weird. I mean, the faces, the body proportions, everything just looks so fucking weird. Mm-hmm. And this is not just Oda. This is, you can see it in the other works of Shonen as well, like Naruto and Bleach especially. Like some of their artwork was actually some of their best artwork was in the beginning.
Yeah.
You might think that that's counterintuitive, right? Like you would think that the artist was kind of pretty sloppy in the beginning, and they should have gotten better. But no, I would say that the art designs have gotten a lot more a lot less appealing. I think. But of course, this is just my shit opinion here. Other people will most likely disagree with me. Yeah,
I just keep thinking back to the One Piece saga where they had to fight the Snake Queen, the Snake Lady Queen. Do you know what I'm talking about?
The Snake Lady Queen. I don't know who that is. Who is this?
That's not her actual name, but they had to fight some woman that looks like a snake, and she's the queen of some island, and
I think you might be referring to this character called Boa Hancock.
Yes.
But I actually never got that far. I know of her. I never got that far into the show, so I don't really have an opinion. But I mean, again, from what I understand of her, she has this weird romantic obsession with Luffy. And again, this is another one of those tropes, right? Anime tropes. Like you got this woman, this female character that is head over heels for our main character for no apparent reason, but that's just her shtick, right? She wants to ride his fucking dick, and I can't get.
Well, I mean, I'm sure some fans are thinking I could really see stretchiness with that serpent pussy,
No, fuck that. No,
I'm sure there are some weird fanfics.
Well, yeah, if you want to fuck snake girls, you should watch this show called Monster Musume. All right, you got this.
Here we fucking go. All right, here we fucking go.
Yeah, I'm gonna go off on a tangent here, right? Because I want to make this point, right? If you want to fuck snake girls, you should watch Monster Musume. Actually, if you want to fuck all kinds of weird animal, human girl hybrids, watch Monster Musume. You got all kinds of weird fetishes, right? If you want to fuck a snake girl, you got that. You want to fuck a slime girl, centaur girl, spider girl, fucking harpy girl. God damn, you could fuck the entire zoo if you wanted to in this show. Jesus Christ. But anyway, I digress.
Not safe for children, obviously.
Clearly not.
Need a sticker for that.
Yeah, not safe for work.
Yeah.
But Yeah, I mean, I think I've said my piece with One Piece. Get it? But you know, in terms of like the other shonen, like you know the big three, you got Naruto and Bleach. You know what? I want to say a little thing about Bleach. I'd say that Bleach, you know, as for all you listeners out there, Bleach had an interesting life. I think it's an unfortunate situation that befell Bleach. You know, the first I say 20 or so episodes, right, where it was just Ichigo being like the substitute Soul Reaper. You know, after Rukia lost her powers and gave it to gave them to Ichigo, he started doing all these like spirit detective work, right? Not unlike what Yu Yu Hakusho did with Yusuke. And I found those episodes relatively entertaining. They weren't bad. I know there are some people out there who did not like it all that much, and they probably just dropped it after that, or before it got to kind of like what I would consider the probably one of the best shonen arcs out there, which was the Soul Society arc. This is when things got really good. In my opinion, this was like episodes from 20 to 60, I believe. It just had it had action, right? You met this wonderful colorful cast of all these characters. There were certainly a lot of them, but they all had their unique personalities, and the dialogue was really sharp. It like there was no wasted dialogue. Everything that was said had some weight to them. Which unfortunately didn't carry through with the rest of Bleach, and I'll get to that in a bit. But overall, the action was great. The storyline in the Soul Society arc was really good because there was that whole conspiracy of Captain Aizen's death. Right, I know I'm spoiling this maybe for my associate here, but I don't think he gives a shit. But the whole thing surrounding Aizen's death and Rukia's execution, right? Like
I did hear about this. I think.
Well, the thing that really was interesting was the whole thing was supposed to be a rescue mission, right? Ichigo and friends were supposed to go into the Soul Society.
Right. Yeah. She gets taken into the Soul Society.
Right, because she committed the crime of giving her Soul Reaper powers to a human. Right, which was grounds for execution for some goddamn reason. And then
maybe they're just like religious fundies, and they're like.
Well, I'm not sure about that. I mean, it was a weird system that they had going on in the Soul Society, but Ichigo and friends were they entered into the Soul Society to rescue Rukia, right? But along the way, when in fighting all these captains and Soul Reapers, there was this moment where one of the captains was killed, Captain Sosuke Aizen. And then now it became like a murder mystery almost, right? Like who killed Captain Aizen, right? And why do some of the characters look shady as fuck, right? Like captain of the third squad, Gin Ichimaru. He had basically the Brock eyes, right? They were like eternally closed, and he always had that like disgusting shit-eating grin about him. And he everything about the Gin Ichimaru screamed like shady. Right, but I think it was all kind of like a red herring, right? They made him look like the bad guy, but in fact, it was Sosuke Aizen all along. He faked his own death, and this whole execution thing with Rukia, that was all planned by him. This one motherfucker just planned out this whole thing, but you didn't know that until like episode 58, 59, 60, and when everything starts coming into place, right? But when you're watching the show, you couldn't have. It kind of kept you guessing. You don't know what's happening. What's going on, right? There's this whole execution thing. There's Aizen's death, and now every all the Soul Society is in disarray. Like, what is happening here? I like that, right? There were a lot of plot elements going on,
and a lot of potential for plot evolution.
Yeah, exactly, and everything kind of coalesced in the end, right? It came down to one guy, Sosuke Aizen, who was the mastermind behind this whole conspiracy, and that unfortunately was the high point of Bleach. Everything that came after that
doesn't Ichigo get like Reaper powers, and then he can go into the past or something? Is that accurate?
I don't think so. I don't think there's anything about time traveling, but I mean, he becomes a Soul Reaper, right? Ever since he got his powers from Rukia, but there's unfortunately the after the Soul Society arc ended, things kind of went downhill in terms of like the narrative, like the quality of the narrative.
Right.
When in regards to the anime, they actually had to include a filler arc that was anime exclusive. It was the Bount arc. Now the Bount arc wasn't too. I mean, it was okay, but it certainly didn't live up to the standard that the Soul Society arc had set. And then it came to like the Waco Mundo arc, right, where they're chasing after Aizen and his posse, as it were, with the Arancars and the Espadas. That was not that great. I mean, I still watched it, but it just didn't live up to like the quality that was episodes 20 to 60. And then it just started going downhill after that. And I think I initially blamed Tite Kubo for this decline in writing, but
was he the one who he directed the anime, right?
He didn't direct the anime. He was just the manga author. He created Bleach.
But
he certainly probably had some input in how the anime was made. But the anime itself was, made by Studio Pierrot.
Pierrot, right? The same studio that did Yu Yu Hakusho, right?
Right, and it probably had a different, animation director, kind of, and story writer as well, right? Not everything is going to be a one-to-one transition from manga chapters to the anime screen. I'm pretty sure.
I mean, personally, I don't necessarily like when the anime takes too much for the manga, because then it just makes a signal to me like, where's the creative where's the artistic license for this? Where's like I mean, yeah, just putting the manga into moving pictures is a huge daunting task, and there's a show called Shirobako that actually kind of illustrates the whole anime creating process, and in a fictional way, but it's still fairly accurate. One of my frustrations with shonen manga is this people's obsession with trying to have the anime entirely emulate the manga. And if they don't do that, oh my god, like, it's a travesty, and oh my god, call the fire department, and we gotta take out these fires now, like I that just doesn't really like register in my mind, because if you're going to put something to screen, I would assume in the least that the director will want to take some artistic license with the original material, right? Like, there's no way that I'm thinking like.
So I think a good example, sorry for would be like something like Full Metal Alchemist.
Yes.
So the 2003 anime, was following the manga for a bit, but then it started
for like 40 episodes, I think.
I would say maybe not even 40, maybe like 25, maybe like half the
up until that inspector, where that inspector dies, right?
Inspector? Oh, you mean Maze Hughes?
Yeah, Maze Hughes.
Sort of, yes. I mean, that was all in the manga, but then it started, going in kind of like a different direction, simply because the anime was actually catching up to the manga. The creator had at the time didn't have enough chapters out, so what happened was, she gave the okay for the studio to make anime original content. And so that's why the 2003 version had a much different ending than the manga.
You know what's funny? I started watching Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood, and like I got half the way through, and I don't know, there was something about the original series that I really, really liked, and I know like people find it kind of ridiculous, like trying to say that Edward Elric falling into 1942 Germany is like really ridiculous. But there's like there's a part about that like I didn't really quite expect, and like I really kind of fell in love with, because it's kind of like it's this really big jump, but somehow towards the end of the series, like not you have to see the movie to entirely get it though.
Right,
but
the Conqueror of Shambhala.
Shambhala, right. But it kind of makes sense in your mind that it's like a very creative sort of crossover that I wish anime, specifically shonen manga, would take more risks with.
Yeah, I mean, I also am in the same camp here. I didn't really have any problems with the first FMA series. In fact, you know, the people, all the other people who are in favor of Brotherhood always argue that the 2003 version's ending just didn't make any sense. Or, you know, like, you know, it was just shittier, right? And I don't know if I've ever seen any, like, really well-written, like, arguments criticizing, you know, the 2003's ending. I think it was fine.
I think that in itself is a really controversial opinion, because I've been on streams on YouTube and say, like, people talk about anime and stuff, and I said the 2003 version of FMA is better than Brotherhood. Changed my mind, and then like one of the commenters like, your opinions are invalid. Like, go fuck yourself.
Yeah, well, I mean, you're gonna run into a lot of those people, right?
Yeah,
you know,
absolutely.
Like the 12-year-old children who can't formulate a well thought out argument.
Yeah,
and
I mean, part of that was me trolling, but I guess what I'm trying to say is that saying, like, being an advocate for creative license, even when, you know, even when half of the content isn't even from the original piece, like, from the original piece of media, that in itself is a huge, like, controversy to, for a lot of people across the spectrum when it comes to media. Yeah. Even recently, right, when it came to like this there's like this Mulan movie, that like live action Mulan movie that's coming out, and in the casting call Disney said, oh well,
let's give it to Scarlett Johansson.
No, that's it's not about that. It's basically because in the original movie, right, Mulan basically has to work her way up and, like, you know, pretend to be a man in order to prove herself as, like, a strong warrior so she could fight the guy with the hawk. I can't remember his name. But, so, in the casting call, it said, oh, well, it's like, yeah, Mulan is able to, Mulan is able to become a leader in the army because of some special like spiritual magic that she has. And people are like, oh my god, like, Disney, don't even make the movie, like don't even try to have this casting call. And then Mother's Basement, Jeff Thu, said, oh well, yeah, like, Disney shouldn't even make this movie at all. And I simply said to him, I retweeted him and I said, hey, saying that you don't want a studio to create something because it doesn't have everything that the original content had. Oh my god, like, give me a fucking break. And him and all of his commenters thought I was fucking nuts for saying that. So it's a very controversial position to say, hey, it's okay if you don't take if your show doesn't use all the original content from the original source, all the content from the original source, and I wish shonen shows would take more risks, because then I think you could have very interesting sort of crossovers and very interesting inner workings happening.
So I think this is like a whole nother topic now, because
But really, it's really not though, because we are still discussing what makes a good shonen anime.
Yeah. But I'm just saying, you know, in terms of like the creative license thing, right? You know, let's talk about the case of Death Note, right? You know, that
For sure.
The transition from, you know, manga to
that
Netflix,
abominable piece of shit.
That live action, right?
That we don't like.
I
to
mean,
talk
you
about.
could argue that that's, you know, maybe that was what the creators of that Netflix movie intended, right? They wanted to do another interpretation of Death Note, right? But of course, you know, it got chewed out because it didn't follow, you know, the original Death Note, right? We got a white kid, you know, as Light. I don't even know what the hell his last name was. It wasn't Light Yagami.
Yeah,
he was not Japanese.
It was like Light Smith or something.
It's some, you know, traditional Anglo-Saxon last name.
Some white people name.
And you know, and so, you know, you got like, you know, Light being basically a white person, right? I mean, this whole place takes place
in Seattle.
Well, this whole show takes place in America, right? In Seattle or someplace. And you know, L is a black guy. You know what I'm saying? So, you know, but you could argue now that, you know, well, hey, this Netflix movie took a creative license, I guess, right? They wanted to, you know, do it in their own, do Death Note in their own way, right? In their own interpretation. But you know, you and I both didn't really like that show, right? So I think it's not always good that a studio, you know, takes creative liberties when it's transitioning from one medium to another. It all depends on how well, you know, it's executed, right? Like, what, you know, how creative is the director going to be? I mean, it could turn out, you know, to be garbage, or it could turn out, you know, perfectly fine. What are your thoughts on that? Like, in terms of, you know, the Death Note Netflix movie, you know, like that was. Wouldn't you say that that's a
well? They made some wrong decisions and they took some risks and they said, well, okay, we're gonna go with these decisions and we'll see how it goes. And well, we got Death Note on Netflix, which wasn't anything to
right, but I guess
cry home about.
But you still do you still appreciate the fact that they did take that risk of, you know, making their own interpretation of Death Note?
Yes.
Despite the fact that it came out like garbage.
Yeah. Well, it came out like garbage because the pacing wasn't good and like the it sort of jumped around too quickly. It focused too much on like it made it into like a teenage romance movie too. Like it focused too much on that and not enough on
the killing
on the actual meat and bones of the story.
Right, which was the cat and mouse game that you know, Light and L were playing, and you know, there really wasn't much of that going on.
So
but again, I think the other problem could be that, you know, sometimes a story just doesn't work in one form of medium, right? Like, you know, there are some things that just work better as an anime, and some things that work, you know, better as a movie, or you know, and there are some rare instances where, you know, a show could work as both, right? But like you have to kind of understand, you know, like what makes sense for you know, a certain kind of show, right? Because I know that in Japan, some goddamn fucking reason seems to have a hard-on for converting all of these shonen shows into a live-action series. Attack on Titan, Full Metal Alchemist, and now I understand that there's a Bleach live-action coming out.
Oh, I can definitely wait for that to come out.
And I've seen the trailers. It just looks weird. Right?
I wish it came out after I died.
Well, no. Here's the problem. When they transition, you know, stories like those that I just mentioned into live action, you know, it's very hard to kind of find the right like costumes, right, for the characters, because to be honest, all of the characters, you know, in like the getup, right, like, you know, say like the Attack on Titan series, you know, all the people who are in the Survey Corps or, like who are wearing like all the gear and outfits and uniforms from the show, from the anime show, when they transition into real life, they look like they're cosplayers. Like the uniform just looks so out. Like
they do look pretty ridiculous.
Yeah, like they don't even look like they look like they were cheaply manufactured, or even homemade. No, I'm not even kidding when I say this. They look like they're fucking cosplayers, and Bleach is also guilty of this too. I've seen the characters that play Byakuya Kuchiki and Uryu Ishida, and even Rukia. Their outfits just don't make any sense. They look like they're cosplaying. They look like they lost their way to fucking a comic an anime convention.
Yeah.
Right. And here's the other thing I'm a little concerned with. They're your name, right? Kimi no Nawa.
Not a shonen.
Not a shonen, right? So again, but my point is that they someone out there, some fucking genius out there wants to make a live action adaptation of Kimi no Nawa, and I have concerns about this, right? Especially if it's going to be made by a Japanese studio. Goddamn, those Japanese folks. I don't know if it's just me, but I don't think they're good at making live action adaptations of animated series.
Yeah, and I think there's also a lot of restrictions as well that they have to abide by.
Yeah, right, and certainly their special effects are and some of the acting, let's just say, there's a lot of room for improvement. I mean, surely the Japanese studios probably don't have as much money as American studios, right? That's why their special effects look very cheap. But even with the acting, the actors out there. I don't really know how good their acting is. I mean, certainly there is a cultural difference. The way that we view acting here in America might be different than how the Japanese view acting, right? So, but from a Westerner's perspective, the acting is, for lack of a better word, kind of cringe, in certain respects. But yeah, I mean, well, getting back to the Full Metal Alchemist, though, I really appreciated, the fact that it dared to deviate a little bit. But again, it's I think that it didn't. I don't think it ruined the show. I think it was. I mean, I was fully invested in the show. I wasn't even aware of the fact that the ending was not part of the manga. That was an anime original. But I still liked it nevertheless.
But I guess to circumvent all the way back to this big point we're making, the point that I wanted to originally make was a shonen anime should not be judged whether it's a good shonen anime based on its original content.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a really bad criterion to judge if something's a good shonen anime or not. And a lot of people do it kind of subconsciously because they'll say oh, why did they skip over this arc that was in the manga? This part in the manga had parts that I liked that weren't in the anime. How dare them? And I see this all the time, and I've seen people make this complaint all the time, and honestly, I'm sick of hearing this argument because it's a bad argument.
So I mean, at that point, why not just read the fucking manga, right? Don't even bother with the anime. If you're gonna be bitching and whining about how not everything went to the big screen or little screen, if you don't like it that much, then just don't watch it. Just stick to your fucking manga, and you don't have to watch it. No one's making you. But again, people are still gonna get salty because that's just the way that the toxic fan base is everywhere.
Yeah.
Again, I think one should judge a show by its own merits, not because it did or did not follow, the source material.
Yeah.
The other thing I wanted to add, also, in regards to FMA, is the fact that the characters, in the original 2003 version, they were just a lot more. It was just a lot more visceral, right? The whole experience was the characters were just a lot more fleshed out. You know, if FMA Brotherhood was had superior story writing, as other people put it, I would argue that 2003 version had the better character development. I cared a hell of a lot more about these characters, and it was certainly a lot more emotional and dark too.
Yeah, especially that the beginning scene with the homunculi, the alchemist that they visit. He combines the girl, his daughter, and the dog.
Yeah, Shao Tucker.
Right.
What?
You're really good at these names. I fucking suck at this.
Hey, one of my jobs is to remember useless shit like this, right? It's never gonna be useful, but yeah, Shao Tucker transmutated his daughter and dog into that chimera. Right. That whole scene was I'd say was a very emotionally powerful scene. And I saw that same scene in Brotherhood. It just did not have that emotional impact. And I that's what I loved about the original FMA. You know, there were just moments that were very poignant, right? Like it really evoked feelings from the audience, in my opinion. And then you just I didn't have that in Brotherhood. Again, Brotherhood was more, I guess, story driven, but even then there were a lot of things in that story that or in that show rather, that I didn't really find appealing. Like there were those moments where they would try to inject some levity into the situation by turning the characters into chibi forms, right? And then it's a lot of a lot of characters get deformed and but again, all of this.
I'm glad I didn't watch the rest of Brotherhood.
Yeah. This was meant to be for comedic effect, but I felt like it was very detracting, to be honest. Like it had no place being in that story. And I felt like why are you wasting time here? Like get to the meat of the story. The original FMA had some really funny moments, but I don't think Brotherhood pulled that off quite as well.
So I guess it seems like we're at the hour point. So I guess we can. Unless we want to keep going, but this is sort of our first time doing this, so
yeah, we're still freaking scrubs here.
We are less than scrubs, so I guess we could pull it back to final thoughts, and I guess you can go. The topic was pretty much what goes into a good shonen anime.
Right. Well, we mentioned there was a nostalgia part to it, but I guess we haven't really divulged too deep into the nostalgia aspect. But that's fine.
Yeah.
Unless if you want to say a few things about that, right? What exactly made I guess Dragon Ball Z and Yu Yu Hakusho nostalgic to you?
To me, I think it was more of it introduced me to a medium that I didn't really knew existed. Like when I watched Pokemon as a kid, right? I didn't think of that as a shonen anime. I thought of that as a children's cartoon show similar to the Animaniacs or Batman Beyond and any other kids cartoons, and that sort of had there were some comedic aspects, and they had a couple of jokes for adults, and it was all about from episode to episode it didn't really make too much of a difference really what the story was. It was just kind of in the episode it was just about a certain topic, or in Pokemon they're helping out a certain area and they were never going to see those characters again. I think Yu Yu Hakusho in particular just introduced me to this concept that you could have a show where there's an overarching storyline, but at the same time have there are cartoons that actually were like actual TV shows where they had this overarching storyline, and you grew with the characters, and it wasn't just a episodic, in the moment thing. It was, I knew Yusuke when he was in episode 1, he was a whiny brat, but in the last episode he's like this grown young adult, and like he's like responsible, and he has responsibilities to Keiko and his family, and but I think that forget that last part, because I think his mom dies in like the first episode, right? Is that right?
I don't even remember, actually. But most of these shonen protagonists have dead parents anyway. So,
but yeah, I feel like what made it nostalgic for me was it was kind of cool, to see the character grow and wanting him to succeed. Whereas when I watched Pokemon when I was in kindergarten and first grade, I guess like my mind wasn't really developed at that point to really appreciate that. But I suppose that it was pretty much like an episodic sort of experience where, okay, Ash is in this town and he's helping out, some mystery, and kind of like the equivalent of like Scooby-Doo, right? Like Shaggy and Fred and Scooby and the gang, they don't really develop as characters. They're just kind of like they're like personality archetypes who fall into this unfortunate circumstance, and they have to solve this mystery, and they get out of there, and the episode ends after 20 minutes.
Yeah, they are. Now that you mention it, the characters in Pokemon are pretty static.
Yeah.
They don't really change all that much. I mean, Ash is the worst offender of that. This is a little off topic here, but they do get better with, like, say, in the X and Y series.
Okay.
The character of Serena actually does go through a lot of changes. That's why she is top waifu. Top Poke waifu.
Isn't she like
fucked Misty, by the way.
They're both like 12, dude.
I don't give a shit. They're fictional characters, goddammit.
Okay, alright. You know what you say, if they're 12, you're 12.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, exactly, right? They're on the... If they're on the clock, they're ready for the cock.
Oh my fucking god. You fucking idiot. Okay. But anyway, I guess like, I wanted to, reiterate that like the sense of nostalgia is sort of based on it was more of like an experience watching Yu Yu Hakusho, because it was the first anime that I saw all the way through. Like I saw this at the end of 8th grade, and and it was something that even though there were a lot of parts of it that I probably forget, it was just like this experience where I would take it around with me, and people who saw the show, like my co-host here, like, it's something that you can connect with, because it's like, well, you guys shared the same experience, and like that's something to be cherished over, like that stupid episode where Ash Ash's Pikachu like defeated Lieutenant Surge, and like or like lost to Lieutenant Surge, and he basically, and Lieutenant Surge gives the Thunder Badge to Ash out of pity. Like that's just like a stupid like occurrence, right? But I think it's sort of nostalgic, because with nostalgia you always try to think of things that are good and things that you generally liked.
Mm-hmm.
And I liked being having that sort of experience where you're kind of growing with the character, and and you laugh, and you want you want the best for that character. And so I guess did you want to say something?
I would agree. I think that the thing that makes some of these shows nostalgic for me was because of the fact that I was watching them as I was growing up, right? A lot of things kind of resonated with me because in most cases, these shonen shows have main characters that are in their teenage years, right? They're formative years.
They always take place around like
high school or middle school.
Middle school primarily.
Right, and this extends to Dragon Ball Z, Yu Yu Hakusho, even like shows like Hunter x Hunter. And I would say that Pokemon and Digimon would also fit that bill as well. They're kids, they're going through an adventure, and they're kind of growing, right? And you feel like as you're following the characters on their adventure, you're growing with them, right? And it's that kind of experience stays with you for the longest time. I remember fondly like watching Digimon, Pokemon, DBZ, like all these shows on Toonami, right? And some of them don't even have to be shonen, right? Some of my favorite shows are like Outlaw Star from Toonami. I absolutely love that show. And one of its messages was growing up, right? There was a really influential Toonami commercial that featured Outlaw Star primarily. It was I forgot what it's called. It was like Shattered Dreams or something. But I mean, the take-home message was about growing up, right? When children leave their homes, right? They're trying to figure out who they are. And I think that is that's also a common theme with a lot of these shonen shows, right? It's a journey about discovery, and I think that really resonates with a lot of young minds like you and me, and so that's what makes them so nostalgic. Also helps that they were again, we saw them when we were kids, right? And they made a very great impression in our minds, and that's I think what makes them very nostalgic. But that's not to say that shows that we watch now as adults can't be nostalgic themselves. I will always remember some of the what I would consider very prominent or seminal shows that have come out in recent years that I consider to be of very high quality, and I will never forget them. They are they're very well put together pieces of work, but again, they're not necessarily shonen, right? That this is the topic of this particular podcast, but for something like DBZ, right? I remember Goku like beating up Frieza, going Super Saiyan for the first time. Like these were iconic moments in anime.
Even with all of the jokes that go into the Frieza saga, I think I still like out of like even before I saw Yu Yu Hakusho, I did see some DBZ and like these sorts of things. But one of the things I do remember out of seeing DBZ when I was a kid was the Frieza saga, and as a kid I'd always make fun of it and say like, oh yeah, like. Oh yeah, isn't DBZ that show where like they're waiting for that planet Namek to
right? You're right.
To explode?
Because Frieza was saying Namek will blow up in 5 minutes. It takes like 20 episodes. That's DBZ time. 5 minutes is 20 episodes. But yeah, Goku going Super Saiyan, the arrival of future Trunks, the whole Cell saga was an absolute blast to sit through, and interestingly enough, in regards to like the other show on Toonami, right, Yu Yu Hakusho, I actually saw that when I was in senior year of college. It was I didn't see it when I was a kid.
Wait, really?
Yeah, my cable got cut back when I was in 6th grade, and that was before Yu Yu Hakusho I think came on. As far as I can recall, so I never got a chance to see all of this stuff that Cartoon Network had to offer from like 2001 and beyond.
That was like 2001 to 2004 were like the golden years for Cartoon Network.
Well, I would say that the 90s, the late 90s, and going into the early 2000s were like encompassed the golden years. But again, like the Toonami brought in a lot of these different shows that I like Naruto. I didn't even know about Naruto until I was in high school. which is like 2005 and 6, right? That was like a sophomore, junior in high school. That's when I started finding out about these kids who were like bringing these comic books with this fucking ninja in an orange jumpsuit. Like, the hell is this shit? I saw Yu Yu Hakusho when I was in senior year of college. It was like 2011, 2012. But I loved it. Right, it brought me back to like the good old Toonami days, and it was nostalgic, I guess, in that sense, right? It made me feel like I was a kid.
It took you back to another time.
Correct, right? So, and I still consider it to be a really fun show. In fact, there are times where I just randomly, if I have nothing to do and I'm bored, I go, look up, hey, Yusuke versus Toguro.
I haven't seen that fight in many years.
Yeah,
I do like the part where I think it's like Yusuke has like that vision where like Toguro has like Keiko in his hand. It's like, what are you gonna do, Yusuke? I have your girlfriend, or whatever he says. I just looking back at that is like the funniest thing because they gave like I think they gave Toguro like a gangsta accent I
don't think they gave him a gangster accent. He just sounded very gruff.
Right. That's a good description.
But again, but still, the voice acting was pretty good. Right? I loved all the voice actors, even Kuwabara's. I hate to admit it, but I mean, because he was voiced by Chris Sabat. You can't go wrong with Chris Sabat.
You cannot go wrong with Chris Sabat. That's one.
And I loved Chuck Huber's Hiei. That was good times, man. Good times. But anyway, this podcast I think has gone on for quite some time now. I think
I guess those were those your final thoughts?
Those are my final thoughts. I didn't really have much more to say on this matter. I mean, if we wanted to really dissect like each of these shows individually and go into further details, that may be for another day. Because boy, do I have a lot of things to say about some of these shows. And let's not even get into the genres that are not Shonen, right? Like the recent genre which they dubbed the isekai shows, which means another world. Basically, it's you go main character gets thrown into a fantasy world, whether it's online or literally like a fantasy world. Right? So and of course,
I didn't know that was the name of the genre. I always thought it was just like MMORPG.
I don't
anime.
think. Well, so I don't think it was. It's an official genre label. I think it's just something that the community has just dubbed it.
But fuck the community.
But I mean, I guess it all. The catalyst was. Sword Art Online, or as I like to put it, shit farts online.
Yeah.
But oh man, that's another rant for another day.
Yes.
But with that said, I guess
I guess to wrap it up here, if you remember anything that we said from this hour or so that we've had here, I think you could probably understand that. I think a good shonen anime, and I guess from our formulated, from our two minds, I guess we've kind of found out that good shonens like to take some risks, like to be a little bit different. Good shonens like to they make the characters likable enough so you will want that character to succeed, and you want that character to grow because you grow with the character. And I think that shonen animes, I think there's a lot of comic relief and a lot of there's a lot of comic relief to go around, and there's a lot to connect with the show on that level. So I guess this will end our this episode, and
all right. So yeah, I hope whoever is listening to this enjoyed this hour and 20 rant by these two losers here. in
Yes,
the
that's
dwelling in the anime dungeon.
That's right.
So tell the folks where they can find you.
Yeah, so you can find me on Twitter at John Smith's Basement. So I'm on Twitter, and then I'm also on YouTube. And I mean, I do sort of political content, but this is sort of like a kind of something else I'm kind of doing on the side. But for this actual for this actual podcast, you could actually we don't know whether we want this to be on a YouTube channel yet, or we don't want or just on SoundCloud, but
yeah, and we based on, I guess, how popular it gets, if it even attracts any audiences, we might make this a recurring thing, but we'll see. We'll play it by ear.
Yes.
And as for me, Mr. MP4HE, you won't find me on any social media outlets.
I'm gonna make you a Twitter account.
No,
I'm gonna make you a Twitter account, man.
Please
and
don't.
And people will send you fan mail and
no, please don't. I'd rather stay as far away from that toxic cesspool that is social media. Right? I'm just some fucking loser who watches anime and likes to share his garbage opinions about these Chinese cartoons, as they were.
Dude. We all love ourselves some Chinese cartoons.
Yeah, and
I mean, I guess you'll probably if we were to do another another episode of the Anime Dungeon podcast, it would probably be on its own separate YouTube channel. But I think I may want to put this up on my John Smith's Basement YouTube channel, but I don't know. I just don't know yet. So that's all. Have a good day, and we hope to see you soon.
All right. Bye.
Peace out.